So this session is the inside scoop. It's designed to kind of give you guys a little bit more information about what all the sessions are this week. We have more than 40 just focused on web development. So, and because there's so many, there's a lot concurrent, so it can be a little hard to kind of figure out which ones you should go to, and just from title and description could be hard. So the idea is that these guys are going to come up and give you a really quick look at maybe one of their demos, some information about what they're going to talk about, and then at the end you guys can ask questions to kind of figure out how you're going to plan your week. So there's a lot of cats to herd here. We're going to do our best to keep it organized. Some of them just did plenary and they're really relaxed, so hopefully they'll get their lines right. Okay, so sorry, Christian, to do this to you. So we're going to try, and each guy is going to maybe have like a minute or 2 minutes to try and convince you to come to their session. Starting with building foundational knowledge. So we've kind of organized a lot of the sessions into tracks. So if you've come to the Developer Summit to kind of build your foundational knowledge and really kind of get that basis of understanding how to build applications with the API, we've made sure that these sessions don't overlap. So you can basically go through the whole week and get to see these core kind of foundational sessions and really get that base knowledge. So the first session is my session with Lloyd. My pitch for you guys is if you liked plenary, then come to my session, because we're going to basically just dig a little deeper in some of the things that they showed you and kind of explore some of the big stories for each of these releases, more recent releases. Okay, and up to bat is Jeremy for Road Ahead.
Okay, thanks, Julie. It's brutal to be talking road ahead when we are releasing in like 3 weeks. So it's hard to see too far into the future. But we have a few things that we'll talk about that we haven't covered in the sessions this week. New editing widgets, new symbol capabilities. We'll drill into it at the session. But this is the one to go to on Friday after you've taken all in the awesome sessions that everybody here has presented, and we'll try to give you a peek into what we're thinking about for the next several releases into 2019. And that's it.
Now you introduce the next guy, Noah.
All right, I'm Noah Sager. I'm going to be presenting with Heather Gonzago about getting started with web development and the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. So if you're new to web development, or you're new to the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, or you're new to the 4.x version of the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, this is an ideal session for you. So rather than shower you with code snippets and documentation, we're actually going to take you through building a real application, starting completely from scratch, and then adding layers of complexity until you're left with a fully functional application. All right, and then Kelly's going to speak to you next about developing and debugging applications.
I'll be presenting tips and tricks for developing and debugging. It's Friday morning after the party, so hopefully somebody will show up. This is a session to come to if you're probably a new web developer. You want to learn how to set up your development environment. You want to learn some productivity tips, like maybe how to get code assist working if you're working with JavaScript, or how to save keystrokes. We'll also talk about how to find common errors. So some of the things we see come up on GeoNet all the time that people run into, we'll talk about how to fix them. And we'll also cover some helpful extensions and tools that we use on a daily basis. And the next person presenting is Renee.
All right, so Kelly and I are going to be talking about programming patterns and fundamentals with the API. And basically in this session, we're going to be looking at the way that some of the configurable apps are built, which is really useful because they are built using the portal API quite a bit, take advantage of a lot of those capabilities. We're also going to look at how you can use some of the existing widgets to do some really cool stuff in the API. Then we're going to dive a little deeper into some of the core parts of the API, things like watching for property changes instead of listening for events, working with layers and some of the different capabilities of layers. And we're also going to look at how you do things like work with promises in the API. We use promises quite a bit in the API, so it's a pretty big topic to learn when you're working with the API, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at different things you can do with layer views and the map views, as well as some of the things you can do to kind of make working with some low-level tasks a little easier in the API. So things like geocoding and routing, and how you can make that a little simpler using tools that we already provide in the API, so you don't have to get too level with it. So next is going to be Jan talking about interesting things.
Yeah. Yes, so on Wednesday, we have a session Wednesday and a repeat on Friday. I'm presenting with Jeremy about the feature layer, so it's one of the main layers in the API. So we're going to talk about like how you can use it, the different types of feature layers, the feature layer, but also CSV and GeoJSON, and then how to use the common APIs like to query for features, query for statistics, but also the differences between querying to the server or querying client side, and then a little bit of visualization and pop-ups. So that covers the fundamentals. And then now we're going to talk about the different sessions about 2D and 3D visualizations. So the first one is, it's also me and Richie, Carmichael, and Jeremy. We're going to talk about the different capabilities of the API to build time-based visualizations. We are adding a bit, we start adding support for time at the upcoming release of the API. So we're going to cover the new APIs and the new metadata that each layer will bring. And then here, Richie built a very interesting visualization about earthquakes with a chart showing the earthquakes along time and how to filter that client side. And then next is going to be Christian.
Thanks, Jan. Okay. On Thursday afternoon, Mohan and I will be presenting ArcGIS API for JavaScript using Arcade with your apps. So Arcade is a client-side expression language that Esri developed. We started it, I believe, 3 years ago. And you can build really powerful applications using that for the web. And ever since we released it, we've just been adding more and more functionality to it. You can use Arcade on pop-ups to calculate fields. You can use it in visualization, such as dot density that was demoed this morning. You can also use it for labeling and also calculating z-values. It's used all over the place, and it's really taken off. I'm just going to show a couple of tweets that came out, just within this last month. I'm not sure if either of you are here, but if you are, I'm glad you like it. The one at the bottom, I particularly liked, where Lucas said that Arcade expressions are the way to create advanced web GIS apps. So if you would like to learn how you can leverage Arcade to create advanced apps, I strongly encourage you to come to this session. It's a lot of fun. It's very demo heavy. If you've been to it before, we're going to cover a lot of the same material in previous years from DevSummit in the first 30 minutes. So if you don't want to hit that first 30 minutes, that's okay. In the back half of the session, it's all new content on how to make dynamic apps with Arcade. Jeremy and I are also presenting tomorrow evening 2D visualization with the API. And so we take a lot of pride in the visualization capabilities that we have in the API. We've got a big swath of visualization techniques that are available to you with pretty simple APIs, actually. It can be a little intimidating to look at all the things we have to offer. We showed a lot this morning, but there's also a lot more that are available to you as developers. We're going to go through as many as we can. We still probably won't be able to hit everything that you can do, but I strongly encourage you to attend this as well, because it really helps you learn how to take your raw data and turn it into something useful. Without good visualization, it's hard to communicate to your users. And that's really what web apps are all about. It's about communication. And so we are going to show you what you have available to you and also what makes a good visualization. So if you're not very confident in your cartographic abilities, this is also a good session to attend. And on Thursday morning, Raluca and I are presenting this practical guide for building a 3D app from 2D data. So you may have seen 3D examples over the last few years, but in a lot of ways, if you haven't built a 3D app before, it can be very intimidating to think of starting to build a 3D app. There's a number of reasons why. One might be I don't have 3D data, I don't know how to use scene layers, or I don't have any scene services. And so if you're in that boat and you really want to start learning 3D, this is definitely a session to attend. It's supposed to help you break that barrier. So in this session, we're going to teach you how you can take data that you have right now and build a nice 3D app with it. So we're going to cover three main concepts. One of those is extrusion. That's a very common workflow. How do you extrude things like building footprints? Another core concept we're going to talk about is how do I take an attribute in my layer and use that as a z value. So sometimes you might have a height attribute or an elevation attribute for your point data, and you can use that with the API to place it in the right position in the scene view. And the last concept we're going to talk about is scaling 3D models. If you weren't aware, the JavaScript API provides a lot of out-of-the-box 3D models that you can use to symbolize points, such as the trees in this image. And we're going to show you how to take advantage of that and scale them to their true size based on data attributes. So if you'd like to get started with 3D apps and you want to do it with your own data, definitely attend this session. I'm going to now turn it over to Raluca.
Thank you, Christian. So this session is about visualizing in 3D. We're going to go from the basics, so like renders and symbols that we have in 3D, to more, let's say, advanced, like smart mapping in 3D. We're going to show you 4 examples. One of them is how to visualize earthquakes, how to visualize world population on a globe. And then we're also going to go into the more creative side of 3D, and I'm going to show you how to create a sketch visualization of your city. Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And the next section is about 3D development. And this presentation, a holistic approach to building 3D web apps, I'm going to present it with Russ, and we're going to take you from through the whole workflow, so publishing data in ArcGIS Pro to visualizing it and using the tools in ArcGIS Online in the scene viewer. And then we're going to take it one step further, and that scene that we create in the scene viewer, we're going to load it in a custom web application, and I'm going to show you how to add tools and features that are not available in the scene viewer using JavaScript. So this is basically like a whole workflow kind of presentation. All right, and next I'm going to pass it on to Joe.
Thanks. So yeah, as opposed to what Raluca just said, like her session is about kind of the big picture, getting the data, setting up a web app. We have 2 sessions that are really focused on how to program the JavaScript API for 3D. This one, and then the first one is on Tuesday night, so tonight, and then the next one on Wednesday night. The first one is, as it says, it's really getting started. It covers kind of like the basics that you need to know to get started. Essentially, kind of like talking about the basics of the 4X API, but with a focus on 3D, what you need to know when you want to build 3D apps. So this is the right session for you if you're not very familiar with 3D and also maybe not very familiar with the 4X API, but you would like to get into all of that. And then the next one is kind of like the continuation from there. Here we're really going to do a bit of a more of a deeper dive into these concepts. So this is more complex, and I guess this is the right session for you. It should be anyway. This is the right session for you if you're either attended the first session, the getting started, or if you've already worked with the 4X API, maybe even only in 2D, but if you already have some background, then yeah, this is going to be interesting and give you a better overview of what are all the individual things you can do with the API. All right, so that concludes the 3D track, and the next track is about building great user experiences, and Franco's going to start that one with the widgets.
Thank you. So for customizing the ArcGIS API for JavaScript widgets, what we'll be doing is learning, we'll be showing the default themes that come out of the box with the JavaScript API. We'll also show you how you can customize using one of our tools, how to easily make the theme work for you so that it better fits your application or your branding. We'll also take a look at some approaches to kind of give a custom look and feel to some of our existing widgets. We also have a theme for our session. I won't say what it is, but we'll have stranger widget things. So it should be fun. For the next one, building your own widget with the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. We'll be covering fundamentals to develop a widget using the 4X API from scratch. Specifically, we'll be building like a very simple game widget. So that should be fun. You'll be creating a custom view and view model that will power this widget that you see right here. For the app layout and CSS styling with the ArcGIS API for JavaScript v4, we'll be taking a look at different very simplified, short, concise examples of patterns that you could use for any application that mixes a map and widgets, how to make them fit the layout that you're thinking of, and also kind of give you some tips on how to customize and make it fit with what you're trying to achieve in your application. Now I'll hand better pop-up UX to Kelly.
Thanks, Franco. This is a demo theater on pop-ups. We're going to talk to you about how to make your pop-up look nicer than just the default out-of-the-box, table, field value kind of approach. We'll look at theming it, so styling the pop-up, custom actions and the various things you can do with that. We'll show you how you can use the feature widget to get hover-type behavior and the responsiveness of the pop-up. We'll also look at some image attachments and various ways that you can view those. So it's only 30 minutes. You should come and learn a little bit more about pop-ups. And next, oh, me too. Okay, the next session I think is a great session that probably everybody should come to. It's about building accessible web mapping apps. Accessible maps are just apps that are more usable in more places by more people. So this is learning about terminology like ARIA, WCAG, 508 compliance, and how to make sure that your apps are compliant with these standards. We also have a demo theater on ARIA that's Thursday from 2:30 to 3, where we're going to take an application that has, I think, 9 problems in it, 9 accessibility issues. And we're going to show you how to find those issues, how to identify them, and then we'll also show you how to fix them. So we'll start with a broken app, and then we'll switch it at the end to an app that's working and compliant. So the next one is Franco, I think.
Yes. Web editing with the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. So if you liked what we demonstrated in the plenary, you might be interested in checking out this session. We'll be covering the basics of what makes how to enable editing in an application. We'll also be showing the new capabilities of the new editor widget that's coming out soon. And we'll also be covering how to create focused editing experiences using some other widgets that we provide in the JavaScript API. Now I'll hand it off to Jan.
Yep. So we are adding a lot of new capabilities into the API to be able to use features client-side that are in memory. So in this session, building interactive client-side app with the API, we're going to explore some of those client-side query capabilities, how you can build a chart using statistic queries, for example, in the client, how to use highlight and also the new effect and filtering API. So how you can combine all of these together to build very interesting apps without going back to the server, for example. I will be presenting that with Richie. It's going to be on Thursday, last session before the party. And now I will, we are talking about tooling and techniques, and George.
Thanks, Jan. So this one's tomorrow. We're going to be talking about building for production. So that'll be taking your application from your development environment into a production environment, best practices for optimization, compressing your app, building the code together, and continuous integration. So everything there to get something that's running on your machine really performant and high quality in the real world. Then on Thursday afternoon, we're going to be talking about unit tests. So I know a lot of people strive to get involved in unit tests and work on test-driven development. This is going to be a very demo-focused app where we're going to start from the beginning and walk you through a number of different tests and show you how to get started using that and how to maybe build tests into an existing kind of large, unruly app that you might not have been able to build tests in before. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Andy.
Hi. How many of you guys are using third-party JavaScript frameworks like Angular? Yeah. How about React? Vue? Any people using Vue? Oh, even more. Nice. Well, for the rest of this section, we're going to talk about sessions related to third-party JavaScript frameworks. Tomorrow, 10:30 a.m., we're going to be talking about Angular. So whether you're just getting started with Angular or you're already building applications with Angular, we're going to give you many pointers on, we're going to try and cover all the foundational aspects of building Angular applications like services and routing, and perhaps most importantly, how to load your modules. So if you're just thinking about getting started with the ArcGIS API for JavaScript version 4, then we could save you a lot of hours trying to figure out how to make this stuff work. Also working with promises, events, observables. We try and cover all the different foundational aspects of this. So definitely come to our session at 10:30 tomorrow. And now Renee is going to talk about React.
All right, cool. So I'm doing a session with Tom Wason on using Webpack and React to build your apps. So we're going to be talking about using the Webpack plugin that we have for the JavaScript API, how you can integrate that into your applications to start building out React applications. So we are going to be talking about some basics of React, kind of a little bit of getting started stuff, kind of introduce you to some things. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the new features in React, like the things like use effect. We're going to talk about suspense, which is like lazy loading React components and stuff. And we're also going to talk about some patterns when you're working with, and it's not specific to React, but pretty much any other framework or basically any application you build, and kind of patterns of how to load the JavaScript API to kind of get as much performance you can out of that. We'll talk a bit about that there, some other tips and tricks. We're going to cover some Esri loader stuff as well, as how you can integrate Esri loader into something like a create React app application, which is a CLI you can use to start building React apps. So it's going to be a pretty fun session. I highly recommend you come check this one out if you're doing any current React development or interested in React development, along with the Webpack to learn some of the Webpack tips and tricks that we're going to have as well. There's going to be another React session. This is going to be done by Ahmed and Ryan. They're going to talk about bootstrapping React apps. This one's kind of cool because they've done a lot of different React applications. So they're going to be talking about a lot of the things they've learned building out React apps with JavaScript API. They're going to go a bit more in depth on the application development part, and they've got some pretty cool stuff they can show to actually bootstrap a React application using the JavaScript API. So this is going to be a kind of a fun one. They're going to cover things like Redux and Thunk in their particular session. We are not going to cover those in our sessions. So if those are things that you're currently using or interested in, then I definitely recommend you check this one out. It's going to be pretty fun. So I'm doing a session with Stefan on using TypeScript with the JavaScript API. So how many people here are currently using TypeScript to build your apps? Awesome. So we're going to be talking about how you, not just how you can use TypeScript with the JavaScript API, but some of the benefits you get with it. Things like being able to define the shape of the types in your applications and kind of how you expect things to happen. Types interface is really useful for that kind of thing. And some of the things that you don't need to do when using TypeScript. You don't have to type everything. You just kind of let the compiler kind of figure some stuff out for you. And in that way, it kind of helps guide you building your application. So that's really kind of fun. We'll be covering quite a few things. There's going to be some intro TypeScript stuff in here, but we are not doing a full intro TypeScript. So there's another TypeScript session that's an intro session that you'll want to check out if that's what you're looking for. We're going to be real quick in our intro, and then we're going to dive right into some of the more advanced stuff and some of the ways that you actually use TypeScript with the JavaScript API specifically. And then the last session I'll be doing with Andy Gupp here and Raluca is going to be building progressive web apps with JavaScript API. So how many people here know what progressive web apps are? All right, cool. So we're going to talk about what a progressive web app is, some things that you need to do to actually make a progressive web app, what it means to build a progressive web app, some of the techniques you would use. So we are going to cover service workers and maybe even show you how to annoy your users with notifications with service workers, how to measure performance in your apps. So we're going to give you some techniques, and especially in 3D, and how you can kind of squeeze as much performance out of an application as you can to get it really performing well. The screenshot here is from a app that we're going to show. This is kind of the scores here, and the 81% here is just because I don't use a home path in my app, but I think I'll change that and they'll give me 100%. But other than that, everything else is going to be great. So we'll show you some ways that that works. And then at this point, I'm going to hand off to Julie to close out everything for you guys.
Okay, that's going to be a really good session. I highly recommend that one. Okay, so you've probably spent some time already looking through the schedule. One thing that we did to try and help out in addition to this session is write this blog. So if you want to have a look at that, it kind of puts together the different sessions that we've talked about. Again, kind of organized in the different topics. We've really kind of thought about when we were planning the sessions, like what are the main development themes we wanted to cover, and then kind of organized them in different ways so that you could attend them. So you could check them out, check out the blog, and it kind of covers these different sections we just talked about. But the DevSummit isn't just about sessions. So we haven't done this in the past, or haven't talked about it in the past, but there are all these other things. So there's the lightning talk, so that's actually presented by other developers in the community. There's the speed geeking. They say it's like speed dating, but it's all about for geeks, talking about what they're excited about. That's actually tonight. I think it's at 4 o'clock this evening. We each get 5 minutes to talk about our thing, and then you go to the next station, you hear another 5 minutes, and so it's kind of fun. Meet the teams. That's a really good way to kind of hang out with the dev team. They're just relaxed. You can talk about your project or dodgeball, form your team, or whatever it is you want to do. Come hang out with us and just kind of a relaxed setting. The whole dev team that's at the conference that day will be there for all the different technologies. And then, of course, there's a web showcase. I know that some attendees just come to DevSummit just for that, because you can show up with your laptop and talk through your project or talk through ideas you're trying to do, pick a brain on, a development idea you're working on. So definitely visit us at the showcase. And of course, there's dodgeball. You have to sign up early, by the way. And enjoy your time in Palm Springs. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions you guys have. It can be about any of the sessions you're trying to figure out you want to go to, or any questions for any of the presenters. We have a pretty great representation up here for really any topic that we've covered around web development. So really, we can take any question you've got. So who's first? Randy, the front row. Just kidding. I won't call on anybody. No questions? Okay, so you guys can go relax to the first session, and I hope you have a really great week. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Before you fill out the survey. I want you guys to know that actually I spend a good amount of time reading every single comment, every single rating that you guys put in all of the web development surveys for every session. So not just this session, let us know it's been helpful for you or not, any ideas you have for next year. And same thing for all of the sessions you attend, because we really do spend time reviewing it and figuring out how to do a better job.
I think this is very true. I think this is Julie's favorite job, to actually look through all of the detailed, and she uses it to help the team focus for the next year. So I think definitely fill those out.
Okay, now you guys can clap. Just kidding.